Our next big discussion in this class is going to deal with ethical and critical thinking in science. Most of the time when you think of science, you think of a right or wrong answer. That if I ask you a science question, you can look it up, you can memorize it, and you have an answer. But with technology going the way it is, and the science going the way it is, there are actually a lot of critical and ethical thinking issues within the science field. So part of this class is that you need to learn how to go through a process of critical and ethical thinking. Now, I will tell you, if you're thinking ethics in the way that, well, I don't cheat on tests, so I'm ethical, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a process of thinking through an issue that does not have a right or wrong answer. So I just want to introduce you to a couple definitions. None of these definitions will be on the test. The way you're going to get assessed on this whole process is through the paper you're going to write on the critical thinking or ethical thinking issue that I have chosen for the semester. So just to get you kind of in the mode, a person's values, they are qualities that signify what is important and worthwhile. They serve as the basis for your moral codes and your ethical reflection. And in this case, with ethical reflection, we're talking about the process of how you think. Now, your values have come from several different places. Your experiences, your parents, people around you, social media, all of those things help to form your values. What you have to think about, though, as we go through this, and we'll talk about this later, is why do you have the values you have? Okay, where did they come from and why are they? So an example of a value is life is to be valued. In other words, life is sacred. That is an example of a value. Now, morals. Morals are codes of conduct that govern your behavior. They're not what you think, they are what you do, okay? And they're governed by your values. So an example is based on the value that life is sacred, your moral code is that one should not kill. You should not end a life if life is sacred. So again, morals are not as much what you think, but as much what you do, right? And they are based on your values. Now, morals can be on a personal level, they can be on a community level, they can be a cultural moral. Again, it can go from very small to very broad. Now, ethics. Again, we're not talking about being ethical. We're talking about a systematic way of thinking through dilemmas that do not have right or wrong answers. So when someone asks you what you think about something, an ethical question, you blurt out an answer. What we want to teach you and what we want you to work on is a process of thinking through your answer. Okay. So an example is, if killing is wrong, can one justify the death penalty or kill in self-defense? So the value was that life is sacred. The moral was that one should not kill. But now you get into an ethical dilemma where you have questions that are now a little more difficult to answer. So if you believe life is sacred and that one should not kill, if someone comes at you with a knife and you've got a gun, should you shoot them and kill them? Why are they difficult? Because sometimes they make you question your values. They have more than one right answer. There is no right answer. I shouldn't even say that word. There is no answer that makes everybody content with it. That's one thing that makes it an ethical question. Now, bioethics is a subfield of ethics. It's when you're dealing with biology and life. Most hospitals have a bioethicist on staff. So there are issues that, again, are not straightforward. I'll give you an example. There was a case where a 14-year-old girl went in for a tonsillectomy and developed a very severe infection to the point that she was on life support. They didn't have any antibiotics that would work. So she was on life support. The doctor, she was pretty much brain dead. The doctor said, we need to take her off the life support. Her parents said no. So you have this ethical issue. Okay, you have this ethical issue of supporting this person on life support, even though their brain waves say they're not alive. So again, a bioethical question is just a question within biology. And so most of what we'll be talking about is bioethics. Okay, so we're going to go through this step by step. And I'm going to help you as much as I can with videos. This should hurt your head. Your brain should be tired when you go through this whole process. It's not easy. And it's especially not as easy if you're younger, because you may not have gone through this process before. When I do it, I kind of have this pattern when I'm thinking about an issue. I'll talk about it out loud, I'll write things down, I'll look stuff up. But if you've never done it before, it is going to hurt. And to be honest, this might be the most important thing I teach you the whole semester. We live in a society right now where we don't have people that are good thinkers. Our politicians are not good thinkers. They don't have the ability to think through a problem and talk through a problem and look at the positives and negatives of the different possibilities and have a intelligent discussion. So most of you, when you're younger, you've been raised in an environment where you haven't seen people do very good thinking. So my hope here is that you learn some basic skills. And yes, I hope it hurts a little bit because that means you're learning something. Okay, so the first step is determining what's an ethical question. So I'm going to give you some guidelines here. Usually ethical questions start with ought or should, implying that it's a difficult decision. It's not a yes or no. With an ethical question, there are several alternative solutions. None that doesn't have a problem. So there is no right answer because what you think should be done is still going to have negative consequences. And one of the things you're going to have to look at is, okay, this is what I believe, but do I understand what the negative consequences are? So there is no one solution that is right. They contain conflicting moral choices and dilemmas, and and some underlying values that makes people clash. There is no right or wrong answer that satisfies everybody, but a lot of times you have to come up with an answer, with a solution, even though that solution will have negative consequences. Now, each solution is going to have positive consequences, but it's also going to have negative. Okay, so there's different types of questions. There's legal questions. There is scientific questions. These are the ones that have the right or wrong answer. We talked about the scientific method. Questions that pertain to religious or cultural beliefs, or pertaining to personal preference, which are going to be influenced by your cultural bias. So I'm going to give you this list of questions. I'm going to give you a quiz on these questions, and what you are supposed to do is you are going to determine which questions are ethical and which ones are any of these. Okay, so the first step is recognizing an ethical question. Okay, is recognizing an ethical question. So I'm either going to quiz you on this or I'm going to set up a discussion board where you're going to have a discussion over each of these, and as a group try to come to a decision on which ones are ethical and which ones are not. This I got from an organization that goes over how to teach ethical thinking. And when they wrote this, though, one of these questions is definitely ethical. One of them is iffy ethical. And the reason for that, I'll give you a hint, is because of the organ they chose to talk about. Okay, so one of these is definitely an ethical question. The other one that is they're calling ethical is kind of iffy ethical. The other ones are all either legal, scientific method, religious, cultural, or personal preference. So again, you'll either have a quiz on this depending on how the class is set up, or I will set up a discussion board. So you just need to go back to Blackboard when you finish this and then look at how you're going to determine or how you're going to write down or show me that you know what these questions are. All right, so this is step one. We figure out which one's an ethical question, and then we will go from there.